Who is Sonia Sotomayor? By Megan Stine. Chapter 6 and 7. Chapter 6, Moving Up and Moving On. After her divorce, Sonia got an apartment in Brooklyn near friends from work. During the week, she and her friends worked very hard, but on weekends, they had parties and went to concerts and the theater. Sonia rented a house at the beach. She knew her life might be short because of her diabetes. Sonia wanted to live fully and do as much as she could with the time she had. One way to live fully, Sonia decided, was to have new and different experiences. She decided to move on to another job. So in 1984, she took a job at a law firm called Pavia and Harcourt. Sonia's job there was exciting and glamorous. She was to help an Italian company called Fendi. Fendi made expensive handbags that were sold all over the world, but in the 1980s, fake Fendi bags started popping up in New York. Criminals sold these copies on the street for very low prices. Why would someone pay $350 for a purse if, for $45, they could buy one that looked almost the same? Every time someone bought a fake bag, Fendi lost money. Sonia went to court. She got a judge to agree that the criminals should be stopped. The court gave her permission to seize the fake bags. That meant she was legally allowed to go out on the streets and take all the fake bags away from the criminals. It was dangerous work, so Sonia didn't do it alone. A group of former police officers went with her. The problem was that the criminals were tough. Sometimes they fought back. Sometimes they grabbed their fake stuff and ran away. Sonia and the police had to chase after them. Over time, the bad guys began to recognize Sonia. They threatened to hurt her. Sonia had to wear a bulletproof vest. Some of the younger lawyers who worked with Sonia were afraid to go out on raids with her, but Sonia loved the raids. One time, she and the police seized 23,000 handbags. The Fendi family who owned the business invited her to Rome. They also took Sonia all over Europe. They showed her what life was like for people who were rich and famous. Still, Sonia remained true to her roots. She invited the Fendis to come to her mother's home for Thanksgiving dinner in the Bronx. She was never ashamed of her humble beginnings. She was proud of her family and her past. In 1988, the lawyers who owned Pavia and Harcourt took a vote. They decided to make Sonia a partner in the law firm. Now she was one of the bosses. She earned a big salary, had a great job, and traveled all over the world. What more could she want? In the back of her mind, Sonia had always wanted one more thing. She didn't tell anyone, but secretly, she wanted to be a judge. Chapter 7, Your Honor. Sonia thought she was keeping it secret, her dream of becoming a judge, but somehow the older, more experienced lawyers in her life seemed to know. They gave her advice that would help her achieve her goal. Joe Cabranes, her mentor, told her to do volunteer work for Puerto Rican groups that needed lawyers. David Botwinick, one of the 9 partners at Pavia and Harcourt, helped Sonia get an important volunteer job with the state of New York. Then her old boss, Robert Morgenthau, stepped in. He asked the mayor of New York to put Sonia on a committee that looked at how money was spent in political campaigns. All of her volunteer jobs gave Sonia a chance to be noticed by politicians. And guess who appointed judges to the biggest, most important courts? Politicians. When the time was right, David Botwinick encouraged Sonia to apply to be a U.S. District Court judge. The U.S. District Court was not like the state courts where criminals were put on trial. It was not like the court where Sonia had been a prosecutor. It was a higher court, in charge of the most important kinds of cases. The judges, not juries, made the decisions. Wow, Sonia thought, being a judge on the district court? That would be incredible. But Sonia was only 36 years old. What were the chances she would be chosen? It took Sonia nearly a week to fill out the application. She had to explain everything about her life, every person she knew, every case she'd worked on, every volunteer job she'd held. The court system. The court system in America can be confusing. There are so many different kinds of courts. Local courts in towns and cities handle small problems. Traffic courts deal with people who get tickets for driving too fast. Family courts help settle problems when people get divorced. State courts handle bigger crimes. Juries decide whether the person is guilty or not. Federal courts deal with laws that apply to the whole country. If someone makes counterfeit money, that's a federal crime. It is illegal in every state. There are 3 layers in the federal court system. The lowest federal court is the U.S. District Court. There are 94 district courts across the country. The District Court in New York is one of the most important because so many big cases start in New York City. The next highest federal court is called the Circuit Court. This is where lawyers go to appeal rulings. That means they try to change the verdict of the lower court. Cases are decided by a group of judges, usually 3. The highest court in the land is the Supreme Court. It is the last chance to reverse a lower court's ruling. There are 9 justices, another name for judges, on the Supreme Court. They are appointed for life. When one of them dies or retires, the president suggests to Congress who should fill the job, but Congress has to approve the president's recommendation. Sonia sent the job application to Senator Patrick Moynihan. He was the New York senator who would recommend her. But that was only the beginning. She would have to be interviewed by a lot of people. She would have to answer questions in front of Congress. Then Congress would have to vote. If they didn't approve her, Sonia wouldn't become a judge. Do you think all these steps happened quickly? No. The process took almost 2 years. Finally, in 1992, Congress approved her. President George H.W. Bush named her as a federal judge. Her court would be the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, which covered 8 counties in lower New York. It was an incredible honor and a dream come true. Best of all, she could stay in this job forever. Federal judges were appointed for life. Learning to be a judge was just like everything else Sonia had done. She had to dive in and learn fast, on the job. Years later, Sonia admitted that at first she was scared to sit in the courtroom. She tried to handle all her cases in her office, which is called the judge's chambers, but finally she had to go into court and sit on the bench. She put on her judge's black robe. She was so nervous, her knees knocked together. Pretty soon, though, Sonia felt confident being a judge. In 1995, she had to decide one of the biggest cases of the year. The case was about baseball. All Major League Baseball players had gone out on strike. They didn't like the deal that the team owners were offering them. The strike had been going on for 7 months. There had been no World Series the year before. Sonia was the judge for the case. The day of the trial, TV cameras and reporters filled the halls outside the courtroom. Sonia listened to the lawyers for each side. Then she took a short break. Some people thought Judge Sotomayor would take days or weeks to decide the case, but Sonia loved baseball just as much as everyone else. She was a big fan of the New York Yankees. She didn't want the strike to drag on. Spring training was just around the corner. So she gave her decision right away. She was kind and polite to everyone, but she agreed with the players. The owners were being unfair. She said the owners should keep working with the players for a new contract. When the players heard her ruling, they ended the strike. Sonia Sotomayor had saved baseball. The New York Times wrote about Sonia. They said she was like a great baseball player who could wake up on Christmas Day and pull a curveball. That meant she didn't need any spring training or practice to do her job well. Sonia probably didn't agree with that, though. Hard work and practice had always been the keys to her success in everything she did.